So good morning, everybody, and you're welcome to the October 2022 edition of Compos Mentis Legal Practitioners Webinar Series. Thank you all for coming on time. We'll be starting right away. So the theme for this month's webinar is building a successful startup in Nigeria, the expectations and new terrain. So, it's become very popular, not just in Nigeria, but the world over, for young, middle-aged and old people to fancy themselves as being entrepreneurs and starting up businesses in all kinds of sectors. And we're proud to say that our country, Nigeria, has recognized that there needs to be some laws guiding the setup and encouraging also new businesses or startups, predominantly in the tech space. Today, we'll be discussing in great detail how that new law will promote and encourage and create opportunities for startups, as well as on a broader level, talking about how the business terrain in Nigeria is today and what opportunities there are for new businesses and startups in all of the tech sectors. My name is Engineer Noli Akpedeye. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Compos Mentis Legal Practitioners. And I'm proud to say that today we have a very distinguished team of panelists that will be doing justice to this theme. It is our pleasure today to have in our midst a most distinguished senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Yakubu Hussaini. He is the senator representing the Kogi Central Senatorial District of Kogi State. He is the chairman, Senate Committee on Information and Communication Technology and Cybersecurity. Our most distinguished Senator, Hussaini, has sponsored and supported several bills in the Senate, notably the Start-up Bill, which we'll be discussing today, which has now become a law, it's an act, and the Solid Mineral Producing Areas Development Commission Bill, which is still being reviewed by the House. He has initiated and driven to completion several constituency projects in his home state, predominantly in the education sector. He's built, refurbished, renovated classrooms. He's deployed e-learning facilities to several schools, and built and implemented a host of CBT computer-based testing sites, mostly for JAM in the States. In addition, he's focused and also delivered portable water systems in Kogi State. Our distinguished senator is was the executive chairman of the Kogi State Internal Revenue Service from 2016 to 2018, prior to becoming a senator. Thank you so much, most distinguished senator. You're welcome to our webinar. We also have Anita Omoile, a woman of substance and a very educated, highly educated and experienced practitioner in the energy sector. She's the founder and chief executive officer of Deep Blue Energy Services Limited, an engineering and resource solutions management company with expertise in the engineering, procurement, and construction management space. She holds a BSc in microbiology and a master's in industrial and labor relations from University of Lagos. She previously worked at very high levels in management and executive positions in Foster Wheeler and in the Shell Petroleum Development Company in the community relations function. Anita co-founded several development-oriented NGOs which are focused on creating conducive business environments and social impacts in our society. And I must say that her company, the Deep Blue Energy Services Limited, operates not only in Nigeria, but in several countries in North America and in Asia. She has over 25 years in the energy sector and is a founding member of the Women in Energy Network. We also have Mustafa Subero. He's the co-founder and CEO of CAPSA Technology Incorporated. Now, CAPSA is a fintech company focused on streamlining and bridging the financial woes of SMEs in Africa. And I would like Mustafa to speak to some of their products when he comes to talk. He holds an MBA from the Lagos Business School and a bachelor's degree in economics. He has over 9 years experience spanning banking and management consultancy with reputable institutions like PwC and Sterling Bank PLC. Mustafa had stints and trainings with the Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Central Bank of Nigeria, and Afrinvest West Africa. You're most welcome, Mustafa. We also have in our midst today, she'll be joining us in about 20 minutes time. She has a meeting she's attending now, but she'll be here about 11:30. Olakumi Oni. She's a woman of many parts. She's senior managing partner, Yet Law Environmental Services. She's the creative director and founder of the 1964 brand, a fashion brand in Nigeria. And she's the operations executive of Tix.Africa, which is an event management online company similar to Eventbrite. Kumi previously worked as digital marketing officer in the Growth and Development Limited. She has built an e-commerce brand while working in operations management in tech, finance, fashion, investment, and social enterprise sectors. Kumi is very passionate about building communities that drive growth for brands and technology businesses. Thank you so much. She'll be joining us shortly. And while we had invited the SSA to the president from ICT, he was unable to attend, but he has sent a very distinguished member of his team, a legal practitioner and notary public, Omori Edoigiawere, the founder of Edoigiawere and Company Legal Practitioners. He's a member, policy, drafting and engagement team and ecosystem advisor for the Nigerian Start-up Bill project, which we'll be discussing this morning. An alumnus of Lagos University, a Harvard University certified leadership expert, holds a specialization certificate in legal entrepreneurship from the University of Maryland in the USA, and a certificate in principled and persuasive negotiation from the Yale School of Management, also in the US. He's an UNCTAD Emprotech trained entrepreneur, a member of Tony Elumelu Foundation Mentors Guild, and a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in the UK. He currently serves on the mentoring committee of the Nigerian Bar Association. And he's an author of a bestseller, The Business of Running Your Business, a practical guide to building a successful business. That should be interesting to read. Thank you so much for coming. We also have as our moderator for this session, our own managing partner, my boss, the managing partner of Compos Mentis Legal Practitioners, and her name is Emokinyovu Dafe Akbedeye. She has a Master's of Arts from Oxford University, also a Bachelor's in Jurisprudence from the same Oxford University in the UK, and a BSc in Economics and Management from Bristol University in the United Kingdom. She's a Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and she holds a diploma in International Commercial Arbitration, which is the highest academic qualification at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, United Kingdom. She's a United Kingdom qualified solicitor. She's a member of the Chartered Institute of Trademark Attorneys, UK, and she has recently bagged an LLM from the University of Southern California in the USA, and the LLM comes with an entertainment law certificate. She's a member of the Future Legal Practice Committee of the Nigerian Bar Association, and she has directorships in several companies ranging from fabric care to non-governmental to tech and even to property investment. So you're welcome, and I'm going to now hand over the virtual microphone to the managing partner of Compos Mentis Legal Practitioners, Imokinovo Dafia Pede, to manage the panel session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much, Engineer Noli Akpede, for that warm introduction of all our panelists. I want to say good morning to everyone. I want to also welcome again our panelists and all our distinguished guests who have joined us at this webinar. It promises to be a very thought-provoking webinar, and we're very excited to learn about, from the regulatory side and also from the business side, the purpose of this new Startup Act and how we see it being implemented and what is actually on ground at the moment. So without further ado, I would like to go first to the most distinguished senator, Senator Seni, and I want to focus a bit on the Startup Act. So it's been signed now into law this month, the new Startup Act. And one of the main objectives was to increase the state of survival and the success of startups in Nigeria. So we would like to know, distinguished senator, what do you believe are the two key provisions?
Okay. Hello.
Hello, yes, sir. We can hear you very well.
Okay. The panelists, the organizers, and you, it's a pleasure being here this morning. Well, when you have to talk of a startup bill or startup act, it's a very good thing that has happened to Nigerian youth at this critical point in time. Like I always said, in Nigeria, we are lucky that our teeming populations tilted to the youth segment. In some countries, you will see that most of their age are more of old age than the youth. But we thank God in Nigeria, which is supposed to be a blessing when you have a youthful population. It's supposed to be a blessing. And I thank God also that Nigerian youths are so talented, are so brilliant, are so sharp that can tap into any opportunities that comes their way. It is Startup Bill. There are two key elements there that we need to critically look at. One, to identify young talents and bring them up to the society to be earning livings and add to the bottom line. That is one aspect of it. And the most important also aspect of it is the funding. You know, if you take a look at conventional bank or commercial banks, they don't really support startup. They don't really support startup. They only support existing business. But in this case, there is going to be a fund available for supporting startup. And good enough, if you take a look at what is obtainable today, you know that ICT or tech environment is going to be the order of the day. And of course, we know that Nigeria cannot afford to take the back seat. So it is an environment that we have unlimited opportunities, unlimited potentials that can accommodate our youth. So I think I will personally appreciate His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, for signing this into law. Because, and I also told the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, the minister in particular, I told him that this is a very beautiful law that has come to see the light of the day. But in most cases, when you have beautiful policy like this, you need to create awareness of which they need to collaborate, the Ministry of Communication and National Assembly and all stakeholders. They need to collaborate and make sure that adequate awareness is being created. Because if the youth are not aware of this, they can't key in. They must be aware first that something like this exists. Even though we know that everybody are in media today, somebody can still tell you that he's not aware of it. You can even be aware of it, but if you are not being told the opportunities or the advantages of anything, most of Nigerian youth have lost hope. But you have to like bring them on board that no, don't lose hope. There is this opportunity. Key into it. You are going to enjoy it. Something like that. So we need to create such awareness. I think those are the things that I am advocating. And when we have to talk of advantages of startup, it's a good one. It has a lot of advantages to the youth.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much, distinguished Senator. We just want to commend you as well for championing this, which has become an act, which is now an act of the federal.
Yes.
Of course, in the digital space, there are a lot of young people, and it's good that we encourage our young people to stay in the country, to have access to funding, to actually put, that's to actually achieve their dreams, which is running businesses, improving the economy and adding to the GDP of the nation. So we want to thank you very much for that, your insight in that area. So I want to go swiftly on for a moment to Mr. Omori, because you come more from the executive angle, from the executive actually getting this bill passed, right? And actually the implementation that we're talking about now. And we noticed that in this new act, the Startup Act, it's really for those who play in the digital technology space. So I wonder, Mr. Mori, if there are any similar laws which either the presidency is thinking about to cover specifically related to the tech industry.
Thank you, Mokinovo and the entire team at Compos Mentis Legal for putting this together. It's good to be here. I bring greetings from Mr. Oswald Gorbadia, our team lead at the Nigerian Start-up Project. He unfortunately was caught up in transit and couldn't make this webinar. He sends his apologies and best wishes, and I hope I'm able to pass across his message as succinctly as he asked me to. So, right to it. It's important that we understand the context under which the act was envisioned. Nigeria has a fine bouquet of laws and regulations that guide virtually everything, right? But when it comes to budding businesses, there's a bit of a fragmented approach to their growth, development, as well as their regulation. And so one of the things that government, because this is an executive bill, but that received enormous support from the National Assembly. It's good to have Senator Oseni here. And it received enormous support because all the players understood that it was important to lend a solid support to the act. However, what's important to point out is that in the new dispensation, right, and the new economic dispensation, growth and development, everything is driven predominantly by innovation, growth, technology. I would want to say that there's really no business that's not going to leverage on technology today. I'll give you an instance. Even the tomato seller, down the road in the market has WhatsApp. You'll be shocked that when she comes back from the market and buys those baskets of tomatoes, she says to her son or to someone helping her, please take pictures of this, take pictures of these baskets and send to Mama John so that they can see that new sets of tomatoes have come. And that's really the simplest, most basic form of trading. Everyone is leveraging on technology. Payment solutions, payment systems are in place. But there are other laws. You have the MSME Act that provides for some semblance of support for medium and small businesses. Right now, I know that before the National Assembly is also another bill, the Omnibus Bill, which is the Ease of Doing Business Bill, that's going to help businesses thrive. But coming down to our forte, which is the Start-up Act, one of the most instructive things to point out is that the new positioning is on growth, technology-based, innovative businesses, and helping these businesses thrive in an environment that provides, a semblance of understandable regulation, as well as meaningful support that will guide their growth and development. And I think that is what the Startup Act is positioned to do. Yes, there are certain guidelines in the Act that provide for labeling and that provide for certain incentives for labeled startups. And I think during this conversation, we'll get there. But also, the Act also provides very, very, very unique opportunities for entrepreneurs. So there are technology incubation hubs, accelerator hubs that are going to be in the 36 states of the country, right? That are going to be open and available to entrepreneurs who want to leverage on technology and who have innovative solutions to build and grow, businesses, and also provides, unique solutions. There's the popular saying that data is the new oil. And so you find that the key participants in mining this oil, in creating this new means of economic stability and sustainability are startups. They are the ones that are going to be in the forefront of mining data, converting data, building innovative products around data, and transiting our economy from an oil-based economy to a data production, innovative and technology-based economy, right? So the Startup Act is more or less a precursor to this new dispensation. Nigeria isn't the first, even in the African region, to have the act. Tunisia has the Startup Act, Senegal has, even Ghana has. And if you look at these jurisdictions, they have witnessed, enormous transformative growth, and a lot of them are pushing solidly to, boost their economic growth from the benefits that they leverage on from the act. But you'll find that Nigeria has more numbers. We have the largest concentration of startups. We actually have 3 unicorns, right, that started from the scratch. And imagine what the Flutterwaves, the Paystacks were able to achieve without a regulation like the Startup Act. And now imagine what's going to happen where an act is now in place that will enable, startups to not just have, a better focused, better centralized regulation, have meaningful and impactful support, have a system in place that enables them grow and deal competitively. This is a legal audience. So one of the very important things to point out is that the Act is very, very, very intentional on ensuring that entrepreneurs in the startup ecosystem monetize adequately their intellectual property portfolios. So ensuring that it is adequately protected, ensuring that they are able to commercialize this meaningfully, not just locally, but also regionally, and also positioning our startups and our entrepreneurs in a place where they're able to adequately compete globally, attract the right level of investment, and more importantly, help grow and build our economy. So I think I'll just stop here. This just gives you.
Yeah, and a lot of things I picked up from what you said is that this act is just one in the bouquet of acts that are coming in. So you talk about ease of doing business in Nigeria bill that's currently before the National Assembly and other related bills. And the point of the matter is that we through doing business in general in Nigeria. So it's not just about the technology space, which is the focus of the Startup Act, but there are other bills and acts that are in the progress to make Nigeria a more stable economy. And so we really appreciate that. We will come and how we want to operationalize this act so that young people can really benefit from this sector. But I want to go straight to Mr.
Just to point out something. Yeah. The Startup Act would be the first legislation that is intentionally addressed to helping businesses grow. So I want us not to really fixate heavily on the innovation and technology aspect of profit of it, but
the act,
really at the enablement that it gives entrepreneurs.
Definitely, and of course, as you mentioned,
yes, and the
as you mentioned, every business, tomato seller or the person selling onions. So it's very important that we have technology to help other businesses in the economy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Zainab, please can you mute yourself? Zainab.
So everyone is leveraging on technology to build their businesses and scale. So the act just is right in. And one very interesting thing is that the act was born as a result of private-public sector collaboration. There was an active involvement of private sector stakeholders. It will interest you to know that I'm in the private sector, right? So I'm part of the startup ecosystem providing services to startups, right? I'm not in government, but there was a synergy, a symbiotic relationship between the regulators and the players to say, look, hey, we want to make a regulation that will help guide the businesses you do, that will help propel you. What do you think you and how do you think we can help you scale?
Thank you so much, Mr. Amori. I know you have so much to give us on this act, but we need to move swiftly on to Mr. Zubairu. And we want to talk to somebody now who is a business owner, somebody that we understand that you're the CEO of CAPSA. And if you look at the act, strictly speaking, CAPSA can be labeled as a startup under the Startup Act. So we'd like to know, what are your thoughts on some of the provisions? There's provision on startup seed fund, there's provision on interest in it, waivers for income tax and things like that, the creation of a startup consultative forum. We'd like to get your thoughts on some of these provisions of the act and how you believe it may impact your business.
Okay, thank you so much. For starters, I would say, can you hear me? Just to be sure, I can see you.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I actually think the Startup Act itself, well, not an act, but it has been signed into law, is a big win for everyone, right? Those of us in the startup space. And looking at the provisions itself, it gives you a sense of a lot of deliberateness being put into it. And also, it shows you that it's an outcome of, it's an outcome of the private or the people in the startup ecosystem working with the government to foster a community that champions growth, right? And growth in all indications, be it from the growth of the small businesses, be it them even hiring people, helping the economy as a whole to deal with issues of unemployment and general expansion of GDP as well. So I think for us generally it's positive. We like the things included in it and signed into law. Specifically for us is the consultative forum or agenda part of it, because one of the biggest challenges we'll face in this space has always been, how do you engage the regulators, right? The regulators we've always viewed the regulators as being those guys that will just come with a hammer and just hit you without even understanding what exactly you're doing, how you want to do it, and being able to guide you to play it right, as opposed to seeing you as a threat or as this young bunch of Nigerians who don't really know what they are doing and just push them out of the system, right? I mean, we've seen so many harsh actions by the regulators in the past, and how that have led to the death of many startups as well as loss of jobs and the like. So for us, that part is a big win, to know that we can now proactively engage regulators. They can listen to us, right? They can understand what it is we're trying to do, and also be a bit more considerate and offer a pathway, right, for these entities to be regulated and get the relevant licenses that may be required to be a fully functional entity within the Nigerian ecosystem. Number two thing that has also been very critical, though, is the part about the seed fund that will be established and managed by the NSIA. That itself is very important, because for startups, the path to profitability could take 3, 4, 5 years. And for that to happen, you need a lot of investment, right, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of getting the right talent and the likes. Prior to now, we've seen many entities relying on foreign capital, right? VCs from the US or other parts of Africa investing in Nigerian businesses. But it's good to see that for the first time, Nigeria itself is establishing a fund to support its own, right, and champion the growth of businesses within the ecosystem. So that itself is a big plus, and we believe that will bring the right multiplier effects, because it's a different thing pitching to the NSIA or investors in Nigeria that understand the ecosystem and the problem you're trying to solve, than pitching to some guys in the US or some other parts of the world that may not really understand what exactly it is you're trying to do, and will only take a bet on places like payments that have been proven with the likes of Flutterwave or Paystack, and will not want to touch any other area of the economy. So that's the second thing we see as being very, very impactful. Then the third is the tax incentives, right? Critical to the growth of startup is being able to get the right talent, right? It's beyond the founder. There's really little you can do. You can do as much as you can, but you need top talent to be able to support you. And hiring top talent itself could be a challenge, because you might not have the deep pockets to pay as much as to pay them competitively. So the tax breaks would be very, very helpful. I believe that would, especially for us as well as a business, it would make it easier to be able to negotiate with some top talents, bring them on board, because that itself will serve as some form of incentives, right, that they could get eventually by joining the business. So in a nutshell, the three areas which is impactful to us: being able to engage regulators proactively, being able to have access to the right kind of funding, and also being able to attract top talent. So it's all positive from our side. The only thing we look forward to seeing is how would this be implemented, right? What would be the operational guidelines and the likes. So we hope, just the way the startup community was engaged extensively in coming up with this, that form of consultation or engagement itself would continue in coming up with a roadmap or framework in implementing these things and bringing the provisions of this act to life itself.
That was very insightful from a business perspective on how you believe the Startup Act will be beneficial to your business. And just for our listeners, you spoke a lot. That's the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, and they are the body which will be managing the seed funding for under of our listeners. And so again, I want to move on to somebody else, Miss Anita, who is also, she's involved in many, many businesses. And what we'd like to know from your wealth of experience of doing business in Nigeria, how do you the inherent risks you faced, and how are you mitigating those risks to achieve profitability within the economy? Yes, brilliant. We can hear you.
I said I'll sit on the existing protocol. Thanks for inviting me. Interesting space to speak on. When I first confession, when I first saw the Startup Act, I actually thought it was general, as in it affected all businesses. So it was later on when I went on, I found out that it was more of a fintech related, and it had more to do with technology and innovations. One of the things that first came to mind was, finally, the country seems to be looking at how to help businesses, right? For a long time, a lot of business owners have felt very strangulated with the role that the regulators and the bodies play in trying to build and grow businesses. And there was a joke I said once at a seminar. I said sometimes it's almost like the authorities fight over who will kill you first, you know, while you're trying to be an employer and provide revenues, wealth for families. Now, when I went through a bit in understanding the act in itself and what it has for businesses, like Senator said, there's need for awareness as to how it can benefit businesses. From my own space, really, the oil and gas sector, which is one of my main business line, has been one that has been advancing in technology. And one of the major challenges that we continually face, that we keep facing, is the fact that a lot of the technology that we use in the industry are still sourced from outside the country. So having access to them in terms of efforts is a big issue for us. Luckily for us, the country recognizes that our businesses are unique. So they do help in ensuring we're able to manage some of those challenges. But in general, while I know that what you want me to speak about is more of how the act affects businesses as I say it, I would like to, mainly because you have the senator on board here, and you have a representative from the executive, that for a lot of the target audience you're targeting with the Startup Act, which is very brilliant in the sense that it actually will be tapping into a part of our economy that can actually be one that moves us from where we are currently at in terms of the age brackets of a lot of people that make up the startup group, is the need to ensure that they are aware and they see this as something that really helps in growing their businesses, and not just as an opportunity to benefit from them only. And what I mean by that is almost like, so it's not saying that because of the number of startups that you're having and the businesses that seem to be generating from the fintech, we're basically starting off to recognize this group so that we capture them into the tax bracket or there. But I liked when I read, it says there's a tax incentive and also that there's 10 years startup label for companies that fall within the 10 years bracket. And that in order for you to be able to be labeled as a startup, you need to have a certification, right? And I just feel that the process in getting all this done should be streamlined so that it does not become cumbersome, as you have with a lot of other agencies and regulators in Nigeria, that instead of encouraging frustrate businesses in being able to strive and grow. I liked the reference the last speaker said with regards to the fact that the act provides an opportunity for the regulators to have an avenue of discussion with the startup entrepreneurs, which in its case before was not possible. It will be good that the agency, I think it's called the Nigerian Start-up Bill Secretariat, right? It's supposed to be one in which they can have a consultative forum, and people can actually air their views as to what they think needs to be done for them to be able to grow and have streamless opportunities in doing their businesses. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that I'm still. I liked also the bit that talks about the tax relief. So for me as a business person, when I read all this and I see all this, right? All I'm thinking of is these laws are in, the regulators are there to ensure that businesses survive. Do they really understand that their role is to make me breed and grow and not to kill me? So when you talk about the fact that a fintech or startup should have a tax break, are we really implementing the fact that these tax breaks are actually being taken into consideration. I'm directing most of the things that I'm speaking about, and pardon the way I speak, because I'm speaking more like someone that's been in business and trying to survive in Nigeria. So when you see all the beautiful laws being put in place, all you're seeing is more regulators, more bills to pay, because it almost seems like every single regulator that comes in see themselves as some form of inspector that are there to frustrate you instead of actually implementing the streamless business sense in which they were created, right? So how do I see this affecting businesses for me in Nigeria going forward? Aside the fact when the intro was done, I do dabble into quite a number of businesses, and one of them right now has a lot to do with research and development. It will really be good to see how the act helps organizations such as that. The part of the act says access to funding, but it does not clearly define the mechanism for being able to qualify to get access to the funding, because a lot of technology-driven initiatives are very, very difficult to quantify the way you used to have in the past, right? It is very difficult sometimes, especially for local investors. For international investors, it's easier for them to see the viability of projects. But for the international investors, there's more at stake and there's more that is required. But the environment that we have here does not really make it so conducive. I'm hoping that with the act and the fact that there's more like a DEX, I would say, that's been set up to handle this, it makes it easier for people to actually aspire towards growing their startup and knowing that they will have the right kind of responses from the regulators. And
yes, thank you so much, Ms. Anita. I think you've given us a lot of thought-provoking questions to answer, and for the regulators to really go back and do the homework and see how they can implement the act, as you say, seamlessly, to make business easier and not make it more difficult for people already trying to do the drudgery of doing business in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your insight and for giving us, because some of these questions you're posing are questions I'm sure over the years you have met these challenges as a business owner in Nigeria, and you know what it is for regulators to come to your door and almost feel like harassment, but that's not what we want. Again, we want someone that helps us to do business in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your insights in that regard. So I want to move on to another business person, another serial entrepreneur, Miss Oni. From your profile, we read that you involved in a number of varied industries, environmental, fashion, and then also some sort of online event management. And so I want to focus a bit on YetLaw, because for me, that's the interesting part that doesn't necessarily fit so into digital technology. But I noticed that recently you've introduced technology into YetLaws for financial controls. And we wonder, what are the pros or cons of this initiative while you've introduced it as a business owner? And how would you consider leveraging technology in any of your businesses?
Okay, hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So the decision to introduce technology into our financial processes came about during COVID. I mean, it's something that we had been thinking about for a bit, because this is a business that's existed for over 12 years now. And we had a lot of manual processes. So we were just thinking, okay, what are the aspects that need technology? What are the aspects that need to move faster? What are the aspects in which we have a lot of layers that technology can solve? And the financial processes came first because we were hit by COVID, everyone was stuck at home, and business still needed to go on, right? And that's the reason why I like technology, because I feel like it solves a lot of problems. I feel like it removes a lot of layers in the process, because that way we're able to still pay our staff salaries. We're able to, I think we partnered with Paystack. We got on board with Paystack, not partnered with, sorry. We got on board with Paystack, a payment processing platform. So that way we're able to pay our staff their salaries. We're able to pay vendors. We're able to get money to the people we had to buy diesel from. And I know you can do this through your bank app as well, right? And that is also technology anyway, right? So I appreciate that period really made us appreciate those processes even more than before, right? And even now, because like I said, this is a company that's existed for over 12 years. We had staff members that were used to a lot of manual processes. And one of the cons is that it was really difficult to get them to change to these digital processes. We're even still having those issues right now because people are so used to the manual way of doing things. People want to be writing numbers on paper rather than doing it on an Excel sheet and just getting it over with. Something that you can do in 2 minutes, 5 minutes would take hours. So one of the cons has been people thinking that technology is going to take their jobs, which I don't agree with. I believe that technology has even created more jobs for people. There's always been that fear of, if we have technological processes, people say robots are going to take our jobs, we're going to be out of jobs. But I don't believe that happens. I feel like technology removes the layers that it's supposed to remove. It makes something that will take days or hours to do get done in 30 minutes, 1 hour. And at the same time, technology is still providing jobs. Because of technology, we realize that people can work from home, people can work from anywhere in the world. I appreciate technology a lot because it has helped me to do all of the things that I am interested in. And it has enabled me to have inputs into different businesses, like you said, environmental. I also have a fashion business. I'm also involved in event technology industry. So it has allowed me to do everything that I want to do. And I don't necessarily have to be in all places. Of course, I can't even be in all places at the same time, but because of technology, I can do all of those things remotely. I can do all of those things from anywhere I am. And it's just really great, to be honest.
Thank you so much, Ms. Soni. And I think something that you mentioned is really important to emphasize. The fact that technology actually creates jobs as opposed to taking away our jobs. I mean, the whole rise of the tech bro is from technology. Without technology, you won't have a massive industry in Yaba that is developing and people are actually making way more money than they would in maybe regular traditional jobs. And that is because of technology. So I want to come back to Mr. Mori. A lot of people, I think Mr. Zubeiru and even Ms. Anita spoke about implementation and their fears that they do not want an additional layer of bureaucracy that is just created to keep businesses down. There are so many beautiful things, your seed capital, so many beautiful provisions, the consultative forum. So how far have we gone really with operationalizing this act? And what is going to be the modus operandi of relating with the private sector and of course the regulator in helping businesses in Nigeria?
Thank you, Emokinovo. Before I address the question, what I'm going to say will address it, but I'd rather come from a particular approach to correct certain, for want of better language, I'll say misconceptions around the act. I listened and I took notes when Anita was speaking, and it's important that we put a bit of thing. So the act is not a regulation as much as a buffer of support for startups. What you have today are fragmented systems in place regulating startups. So you go to CAC to get your registration, you go to NOTAP to deal with technology transfer, you go to CBN if you're in the fintech ecosystem to get your licensing, SEC, you deal with the trademark office for your intellectual property trademarks or the copyright commission, So there are fragmented regulations. One of the things that the act is meant to do, and that's a key objective, is to bring some level of coordination to the regulation that governs startups through, for instance, the startup portal, a go-to space. So what the act is really doing isn't coming to place new rules to regulate startups. It's coming to harmonize the structure and create an enabling environment. The introduction of the Act provides that the Act is enacted to create an enabling environment for the development and growth of startups in Nigeria. Now, also, when you define, so if you look at the definition of startups in the Act, it defines startups as a business within 10 years of existence that is in the creative, innovative, production, technology, or development space. I'm summarizing that definition. But it's important that we understand the context. We're here today having this conversation, leveraging on technology. So if a business that provides, so it's not just fintech. So when you talk about startups, what goes to the mind of people is fintech, FMCG, environmental, oil and gas. There's so much. So any business, any sphere of business that an entrepreneur works in, where you leverage on technology or where the end product is predominantly providing a technology or innovative-based solution, you fall within the definition of startups. So the Act is not a regulation. The Act is a system, right? A law that comes to create a system where startups have an enabling environment. That's one. The process of labeling is clearly spelled out, right? And that process of labeling is not more of trying to, again, bring startups under some measure of scrutiny or trying to take them through the whole of what they've gone through. It's essentially to provide a harmonized system where you can actually have the right data of startups and the startups who can now avail themselves of the benefit. And what's the process for labeling? You're within 10 years, you have 1/3 Nigerian ownership, and your business falls within the definition of startups, right? And once that's in place, the startup gets labeled. And once you're labeled, you're now able to avail yourself of the benefits. Emphasis on the word benefits, right? Now, the Act also provides for technology and talent development and innovation and talent development, working with universities, higher institutions, creating acceleration and tech hubs across the entire country to provide training and capacity building and development for entrepreneurs in the innovation and tech ecosystem. So the Act does not provide a law, for instance, or provide a part of it that now increases the regulations that startups have to be bound by. What it is doing is harmonizing the structure, removing a system where presently you have fragmented regulation and creating a harmonized system. How did this come about? Like I said at the introduction, I'm a private sector player, but I've been actively involved in the drafting, in the engagement, and now in the implementation of the Act. A symbiotic relationship between the regulators and the private sector players. So the consultation was startups. What are the problems you face? Fragmented regulation. So for instance, some startups don't even know where to go to get licensing. They don't know where to go to they don't even know if the businesses they are doing, are regulated. So you just see people just working offhand. The Act is going to put an end to that. Through a harmonized system, you can go into the portal and assess the support, and assess all the regulators. So what we're doing really is not reinventing the wheel. What we're doing is bringing all the regulators into one place. So I don't need to go to CBN and comply with the CBN process, go to CAC, go to the Federal Ministry of Trademark, go to NOTAP, go to SEC. All I need to do is get labeled, come under the portal and get all the registration and regulatory support. And also, beyond even that, you also have troubleshooting. So where you have issues, you go back to the portal and engage with these regulators.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Murray. Sorry, we'll have to leave it there now.
Just to also point out some of the incentives, right? So when you talk about tax regulation, when you talk about the tax incentives and all that, essentially what the Act is really doing is, if you know, for instance, we have the Finance Act. The Finance Act provides, a reasonable, healthy measure of incentives for growing businesses, setting waivers. What we're doing is bringing life to some of these regulations that support entrepreneurs and startups. And now,
so before we go, before I leave you, Mr. Murray, one question: when will the portal be up and running?
Okay, so the act was signed on the 19th of October.
Yes.
Right. So what we've been doing before today was engagement. Now, the next step is now implementation. There's a process. For instance, the act provides for the establishment of a council, the establishment of a secretariat. And so those things have to be put in place. The council has to be set up by the president. The secretariat has to be up and running.
So the point is there's no date yet.
No, so, well, we're less than 2 weeks. We're less than a week, So these things take processes. The portal, for instance, is going to be created. All the sectors of government that I have called have to come in and create sub-portals inside the portal. So these are things that take time. Okay. And what is important?
Okay, so just so that we have to get other people on, just the only thing we will mention here, as you say, this is a laudable act, and what it's trying to do is harmonization, not create more regulation, right? We are our hope as business people is that there will be enough awareness for people to know at each stage when we can access funding, when we can access the portal, because right now, we know that the act has been passed. That's what we know as Nigerians. But then, of course, the next stage for the implementation, Nigerians also still need to be carried along in that process, and we will hope that is done effectively.
That's been done. So if you follow the social media channels, if you go to the website, these timelines are being posted.
Yes. Okay. So we'll have to leave it there. But thank you so much, because I know you have a lot to give us, being that you were heavily involved in getting this act off the ground.
Sorry, the reason I say this is important that we do not carry the wrong conception, right? That we understand the import of the act and the benefits it seeks to give. So you don't go under a misconception. Yes. That's why it's important to throw light on some of these issues.
Thank you so much. So we'll have to leave that there. And yes, there's a lot to be said about the Startup Act, but there's something else I would like to, if the senator is still with us, I would like to ask a particular question, because he's the chairman for ICT and cybersecurity at the Senate. Of course, when we talk about technology, there's cybersecurity threats and issues that come up, right? And what we'd like to know, what are the critical cybersecurity issues affecting businesses in Nigeria? And what are some of the ways that the Nigerian government is trying to help us combat those issues?
Thank you. There are a lot of cybersecurity threats to some businesses and other governmental agencies. There are a lot of measures. Or before the measures, if you take a look at the financial sectors critically, they suffered in silence a lot of cyber attack. But as God have it, we have a lot of crop up of businesses who are into cyber war, and they are actually doing well. And if you take it in the recent time, most financial sectors, they are now engaging private sectors to help them fight against this insecurity cyber insecurity. So they are doing that. There is a lot of threats, but in the recent time or over the time, there is no much threat to government agencies because they are not fully digitized. But we are looking at that now that we are talking of e-governance. So now that we are talking of e-governance, so where all the government activities are going to be electronically done, we are looking at that because people are not actually looking at their side now. But by the time we have achieved that. We're looking at 2023, though I don't think it will they will meet the deadline. But then, since we are talking about that, we have to talk about mitigating the likely cyber threats. But now, there are a lot of measures that are taking place. There are a lot of laws, bills that is coming up. The NSA is actually on top of the game to make sure that we strengthen them to fight against cyber threats. So if you take a look at the whole thing critically, in every ICT development, definitely there is attendant threats. But before you develop anything, before you go into anything, what you must look at, okay, in case it goes the other way, what happens? Because the people in this field, they are actually working day and night. They are working ahead of you. And that is why government and even some individual businesses, they are not actually sleeping too. They too are up and running to make sure that they are kind of a counter in case such activities were launched on them. So there are a lot of activities on ground, but all aspects of it, we're actually working things there. And there are a lot of private businesses that are into cyber work that are actually, people are engaging, even government, some critical government facilities, they are using them. So when we talk of the Army, NSA and others, so they are using all those private businesses. So we're aware of it and we're working on it.
Thank you so much, sir. And I just want to thank you in a special way for honoring our invitation to attend our webinar. I've been told that you have to leave for a very
Exactly.
You, the most distinguished senator of the Federal Republic, while you go and do the good work for your constituents and for the rest of Nigeria. We commend you for the efforts you made in the Senate for passing this bill that has become an act. And we hope that we can expect more bills that will help Nigeria, like the ease of doing business in Nigeria, that will pass and will help Nigeria to progress and to increase our GDP. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I respect others. I respect their intellectual prowess and hope to meet you again. We'll meet again.
Thank you, sir.
I wish you well and I wish you fruitful celebrations. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Right.
So we're going to go again to Miss Anita Amwalile. And I know you noticed that you had your hand up. I suspect that you have some rebuttals to what Mr. Omori said. So I will let you have the floor for 2 minutes to make your comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Omori. I'm actually very happy with the way you explained the fact that it's more of a portal. And interestingly, you know, sometimes when you've stayed in business for a long time, you seem to hear different things in different languages. It keeps like going in a circle. I remember when they started off with I think it was a one-stop shop for new businesses, right? And you had to have your CAC, everything almost like in one office. Now, the impression, I remember the first time I saw it, I thought, about a fantastic idea. It means I just walk in there and I get everything under one roof. The shocker was that was not what happened. You know, you get in there, yes, it's under one roof, but you still have to deal with all the various agencies. And you still had personnel within the one-stop shop telling you that you had to go to the various regulators and get all the documentations and the permits and thereabouts you need before progressing with what you required from what you required in order to get your business streamless. Now, the the fundamentals of regulators, like you said, and differentiating it from where you're at, all makes sense, right? But I think there has to be that education that the businesses themselves, and this act is meant to enable and help companies grow and not to become another watchdog. Because you find that in Nigeria, I don't know why it is the way it is, but whether you call it a service monitoring group, or you call it a supervising or a holding body, right? People get positions, and the next thing, it seems like it's an opportunity to exact your power towards those that come in to get businesses done. And the truth is that it can be very, very frustrating for businesses. I'm very happy at the education in terms of what the act says, in the sense that it does not follow me on fintech. And I did read that, which is one of the reasons why I mentioned that other businesses I'm going into could actually benefit from it. But I don't know if there's a misconnect between the other arms of government, the agencies, and what things like this bring to the table. Because when you're discussing with them and you're trying to point it out to them, it's almost like you're speaking grammar. This is my table, and this is what our expectations are. Yes, you're telling me that because of where you're coming from, your company is only how many years old, it's just starting business, it should not be in this bracket of, you're basically speaking story. So while we're looking at educating the entrepreneurs on the benefits, there's also need for the agencies to actually have some kind of education within themselves to know that whatever is agreed or passed as an act, it filters through every other law that may have been before then, so as to ensure that the organizations really do strive and grow instead of being truncated because of a misunderstanding or misalignment within what is expected. I don't know if my 2 minutes is up, but I don't want to speak too much, but that's just it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anita. I love what you also bring to this webinar, because at the in terms of what the law says and the actual implementation is two different things. And you have experienced important that this feedback, that private-public partnership is had, and then the feedback is fed, into the consultative forum, so that these issues are addressed on educating the regulators. Not only businesses need to be regulated now, educated, but the regulators need to be educated so they implement the act. Amori has taken on that feedback, and he will assist us in getting that agenda across. So I want to go back again to Mr. Zubairu. Is going to be definitely labeled as a startup under the Startup Act. And I think what CAPSA does is they leverage technology for alternative funding across Africa. So far, what have really been your challenges in deploying some of your initiatives in Nigeria, and how have you been minimizing those risks in doing your business? Mr. Zubairu, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. I lost all.
I think can you hear us, sir?
Having audio challenges.
Okay, I will come back to him.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you now. We can hear you now.
I think I lost the last bit of the question. I was just trying to.
Okay, so I was asking, what challenges have you faced in deploying your innovative products in Nigeria, and how have you been minimizing some of those issues in doing?
Oh, great. So yeah, from challenges standpoint, right? I think I'm going to bucket it into that we've faced so far with users, that we've faced so far with like regulators, and yes, I was just saying that in general, right, running a business in Nigeria has its own challenges, its own peculiarities, right? So the general macroeconomic operating issues from instability in prices, that is inflation, to exchange rate and the likes. So that we do contend with as well. But specifically for us, in terms of the nature of business that we run, the number one thing we've seen is people not being able to properly understand what it is that we do at CAPSA, because it's more or less first of its kind, right? And in the sense that traditionally or more, also people just believe you can only get money into your business through taking a loan, which is debt, or you're taking equity or something like that. But when I start saying to you that, hey, you could actually not take a loan and you could just trade an asset and use that asset to fund your working capital or any other thing, it still sounds to them as if you're giving me a loan. And you always get that pushback as to, hey, what is this loan? What is the interest rate? What is this? Well, like, hey, I'm not giving you a loan. It's not what it says, right? And that itself is so something we had to contend with as well. When we started engaging the regulators as well, specifically I think the SEC, that this is a bit different, right? We are trying to encourage a new asset class, right? That would champion or that would fund working capital for businesses. So for us, we've seen that as a way of a whole lot of stakeholders engagement from our part, a whole lot of putting out more materials to enlighten the people we're working with, and also promote the concepts, right, which we're trying to push out there as a form of alternative mode of financing for businesses. Then the other key thing that's been a big challenge for us as well is getting some critical stakeholders to collaborate or work with us. And what do I mean by that? Our model works in a way that we require the big companies to collaborate with us, right? Because we want to be able to verify claims made by suppliers or vendors to say, hey, to be paid X naira, to be paid ₦1 million by, for instance, international bureaus. The only way I can authoritatively know that that claim is genuine is if I can get through to international bureaus and being able to verify that truly this guy, you have to make payment to this guy on XYZ date, and then allow that guy to trade that particular asset or the invoice. But we've seen situations where many of these big companies are a bit jittery, right? In the sense that they understand the implication of, in a factoring process, the liability comes to sit with them, and then they are not obligated to pay, because for some of these guys, they like owing, they more or less like taking advantage of small businesses, right? Where you decide not to pay them in 3 months, in 6 months, and nobody can do anything to you. So getting them to come onto a system that holds them accountable to say, if you're meant to pay someone in 30 days, you've signed an agreement that ensures you pay in 30 days, otherwise you're liable. That itself has been a challenge, but the good part to that as well is when we see companies are unable to collaborate or partner, that's a red flag, right? And we've seen responsible institutions that are very happy and willing to partner with us in that regard. So I would say those are the key challenges we've seen so far. People being able to understand and get some of these key stakeholders to come on board. From a risk standpoint, what exactly have we done to mitigate the potential risks in our operations? One is we've been able to more or less digitize our processes and being able to see things end to end, streamline, take out inefficiencies, and see things as they happen real time, right? And being able to track or trace where each transaction or each activity is coming from. That itself has made it easier for us to know where things originate and where they terminate, one. Two, what makes that process efficient is because we also work with our legal partners, come up with a robust KYC AML policy, and whereby for every business partner that comes on board, we are able to properly identify who they are, what exactly they do, and their genuine source of earnings or the source of income and the like. So that way, we've been able to bring in on board only credible partners and limit our exposures to things around AML, identity theft, and the like. Third fundamentally thing we've been able to do as well is, which was what I mentioned earlier, working with these credible corporate businesses to verify claims that have been made by, by businesses that own invoices, right? Because in the past, we've seen situations where people can just put malicious claims on invoices and they use it to source for funding, right? But we'll be able to build a system that for every claim you make, our system can connect into databases or into ERPs of the company which you claim is to make payment to you, and verify those details and then make that invoice a tradable asset, right? So those are systems we'll put in place to check some of those things.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zubero, for telling us a bit more about your organization. I'm sure there are business owners here who will like to access this new type of funding, which you say is not a loan and it's not equity, but I'm sure you explain it more. And that's part of the burden on being a technology company. You have to explain your products. You have to explain the benefits to your customers. And I commend you for doing a good job so far. And
thank you.
I'd like to go lastly, before we go to question and answers, to Ms. Oni. Given your different array of businesses, from fashion to online event managing, and of course the environmental services, we'd just like to get your final thoughts on doing business in Nigeria. In your estimation, based on your experience, would you say that doing business in Nigeria still has the potential of outstripping the difficulties you face in this terrain?
Well, I hope so. I hope the benefits will outweigh the difficulties eventually, but it's really difficult. I'm sure we can all relate to the fact that it's really difficult. First of all, the government policies, then there's inflation, the economy. For one, I mean, we've been trying to buy new trucks for our fleets. That's the environmental services for a couple of months now. And it's really stressful because there's limited access to foreign exchange, and to purchase locally is also very cutthroat. So so those are one of the issues. That's just one out of the many issues that we face. And well, let's hope that with the government's being open to things such as the Start-up Bill and other, the ease of doing business and all of that, let's hope that things will get better in the next couple of years. We can only just hope that eventually the pros outweigh the cons.
Thank you so much, Ms. Oni, for that very candid assessment of the situation of doing business in Nigeria. Now I will throw the platform open to a few questions. I'm looking in the chat room. Is Mr. Mori still here? There is a question that I think is particularly directed at him because it's an implementation question. I think he's dropped off a bit. A lot of the questions are actually targeted at him. A lot of people want to know about the implementation plan and the startup portal. Is Mr. Mori still here?
So he's having some internet challenges, but he's trying to come back on.
Okay. Because the questions are really focused on understanding how we access funding that he mentioned, the seed funding that was mentioned in the Startup Act, and also about the portal. And I think he will be best placed to answer a lot of the question.
Just give me a couple of minutes and see if he comes back. But in the meantime,
I'm back.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming back again. You have the honor of having the most questions to answer because a lot of it is based on the implementation of the Act. So people want to know, how do they access funding?
So one of the things that in the coming days we would be releasing would be a roadmap, an implementation roadmap. It's going to be picturized, it's going to be broken down, and will provide a very healthy information gap. But I'll just speak from the Act, right? The Act provides for a seed fund, a startup seed fund. There's going to be warehoused by the NSI, Sovereign Investment Authority. That's going to be accessible to labeled startups. So the starting point is to get labeled, right? But there's also another conversation that we're having at the level of the implementation, which is pushing for state adoption. What we're saying to the 36 states and the FCT is also adopt the act by providing miniature versions of this act in form of laws and executive orders or directives in your states, so that you can contextualize the benefits. So states also could provide some seed fund. For instance, Lagos State, through its Research and Innovation Council, has provided over 60 startups with funding from between $12,000 and $20,000 to scale and grow their businesses, right? And Lagos State has fully, come on board with the adoption, and in a matter of weeks, the Lagos State Startup Law will be in place, which is borrowing a leaf from the Startup Act, right? So this engagement has been on even while it was a bill, even while it was at the National Assembly. We've been in talks with states. So that's also going to be another avenue for states, for startups to get funding through grants that states could give. But like I said, the essence of this act is to give a playing ground where startups can adequately thrive, can scale their businesses, and they don't have to bother about bureaucracies and bottlenecks. And then they also get the support, because 10 billion naira, for instance, is not really going to go around. But the idea is to position our startups in a place where even investors, right, VCs can come in and comfortably invest in Nigerian startups, where they can have collaborative relationships with players in the international ecosystem and also get funding, where they can adequately monetize their intellectual property rights to get funding. And then also you have pioneer status, for instance. If if a startup meets the requirements to be given pioneer status, that automatically puts them in a pedestal to get certain incentives, right? And certain reliefs and certain funding support. So these are the various ways that startups can get funding. The seed fund that's established, and this is going to be the first time that you're going to have a law that is now actually provided for funding for startups. So what you have before are, departmental orders or executive instructions that another government or another administration can come in and decide, no, we're not going this way. But now it is now legalized and put in a law that provides, this funding support, because we realize that one of the things that startups need is funding, and it's very important that they assess this funding. So I'm sure this would give some bit of a background as to how to get, how startups can access funding. But the starting point is to get labeled. So I think that the focus, for any startup in this meeting and around is to, first of all, look at their peculiarities and ask themselves if they meet the threshold for startup labeling. And once they do meet the threshold, they'll definitely be labeled, because once they get labeled, they can access this funding, not just from government, but from VCs and even from their states at the state levels. Because, for instance, things like PAYE, things like business premises tax, these are other forms of taxes that are not available at the federal level, but states can make available by giving waivers and grants or incentives to startups in their states.
Thank you so much. Yes, that actually answers most of the questions. The only thing before you just go, before I allow Mr. Zubairu give his comments, is what is the implementation plan and timeline? Where can we find that?
Okay, so I'll just take you through the 5 pillars of the Act: collaboration, engagement, collaboration, engagement, incentives, linkage, and support. These are the 5 key pillars that the Act is focused on getting, bringing home, right? So right now, the Act is a product of collaboration. The implementation also is going to be a product of collaboration. Don't forget that if you look at the Act, you'll also see that stakeholders are part of the Council, which is the highest national body. And this is going to be the first time that entrepreneurs like Zubairu, for instance, may be a nominee of the Stakeholder Consultative Forum, Startup Consultative Forum, and be on the Council. the National Council that will regulate that will ensure the implementation of the act, right? So it's going to be the implementation is not an executive thing. It's going to be a product of a collaboration. And also you have engagement. So right now, what's happening also is engaging all the relevant regulators, the CACs, the CBN, the SEC, the NOTAP, the Trade and Investment, engage them to understand the import of the portal and how we need to synchronize the registrations and control system in one place, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And
yes, thank you so much. We'd really appreciate if you give us the handle either on Twitter, Instagram, so we can follow.
So Twitter, Startup Act, Nigerian Start-up Act, Instagram, Startup Act NG. The website is startupbill.ng, but it's transitioning. It's going to transition to startupact.gov, but that's going to be a government website. So we're working on getting that out in the nearest.
So all the information will be online, so our budding entrepreneurs can go through it, and we're putting it. Compos Mentis LP is putting it in the chat box for everyone right now, so you can follow them. You can engage and know what is happening.
So if you send a DM on Instagram, send a DM on Twitter, LinkedIn, right? The Nigerian Startup Act on LinkedIn, you're going to get an immediate response to your question, and the timeline will be put out. So we want to be able to be held accountable. And that's why we want to also give you the right information, roll out the right information, roll out the right timelines, and ensure that you can hold us to what we say will be done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Omori, for that very insightful discussion and letting us know more about the implementation of the Act. And I want to give the final word to Mr. Zubairu. I think you had a comment or a question. Your mic is off. Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. It's more of a question. I just wanted to ask that, like, can I go to NIDA on Monday and start the process of labeling, or what is it? Because I hear some committee needs to be set up. So is it rolling, or what exactly are the next steps? What should I do? Can I go to NIDA by Monday and start the process of getting labeled?
So here's the thing. NIDA is going to be running the secretariat, but NIDA is not going to be the secretariat.
Okay.
So the council has to be set up by the president, and that is in the works, right? Okay. We also need the Startup Consultative Forum to, be put together and have its representatives who will sit on the council. And it's going to be an open process. Until the council is set up, the secretariat can be set up. Until the secretariat is set up, the portal can run, right? So I'm just going to give you an instance. When the Companies Act of 2020 was amended, and I'm sure Emokinovo would be very familiar with this, right? When the Companies Act was made, it took about 6 to 8 months for the Corporate Affairs Commission to, come in, adjust its systems and adjust the forms and all that. This is a revolutionary law that has come in place. The Startup Act is never seen before legislation in Nigeria that's going to make ease of doing business, next to, fast. But it's also important that we realize that it's going to take stages because we're bringing everybody together. And in order for it to be properly done, it has to be, tidily done. In order for it to be properly impactful, it has to be tidily done. Up until the 19th, everything was in the realm of speculation, because until the president signs a bill into law, everything we've been doing will be speculative. But by the 19th, when he signed, we can now actively begin to have those conversations that will lead to the actual implementation, because now we are no longer working as of leave, we are now working as of right, right? So the actual main work started from the 19th.
So we have to leave it there. I think this conversation is an ongoing one. As you say, implementation just started less than about a week ago. So it's something that we're going to, in the coming months, we're going to see the actualization of this plan. And we'll be following you on Instagram, we'll follow you on Twitter, we will ask questions, we will engage with the process, because this is our process, it's for Nigerians. It's not just made by the federal government to sit on the shelves, right? So it's made by Nigerians for Nigerians. And we're very hopeful that this act will help us actualize our true potentials in this country. And so my final job today is to thank everyone that has attended this webinar series. It has been an exciting one. I also want to thank our panelists for being so engaging, people from business, Mr. Zubero, Ms. Anita, Ms. Oni. I hope that even you learned something a bit about what is going to happen in the Startup Act. And we thank you very much for sharing your years of experience of doing business in Nigeria. We also want to thank the Senator in absentia for the great work they've done in passing this bill into an act. And we also want to thank Mr. Omori, who has been on the hot seat a lot for this session and has really given us insights and has given us the assurance and the hope that this act will be a different one from what we're used to in Nigeria. Thank you also very much. I will hand finally over to my COO, Engineer Akpede, to close the meeting.
Well, thank you very much, my managing partner. Excellent debating, I must say. And thank you to all our distinguished guests and all those that joined us for this webinar. I've seen comments like, thank you for this session. It has been very insightful and knowledgeable. Time well spent. So we're really glad. This is part of Compos Mentis Public Enlightenment webinar series. And we'll be coming up again in another 3 or 4 months' time. Please join us. Compos Mentis, all the information for this webinar and further information on the acts that we get from Mr. Mori and the team will also be on our website, www.compos-mentis.com. So reach us if you have any further questions. We'll refer you to who you need to be referred to. If you want to take advantage of the products that are coming from CAPSA, please talk to us and we'll put you in touch with any of the panelists that you want to talk to. So thank you so much and God bless you all. We'll see you again in another 3 or 4 months.
All right, thank you. Have a good day, everyone.